Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Russell and I'm from Mitsubishi Electric. And the panel today is to talk about the ideal home in the ideal town. And the government's got a plan to build 7 new towns. And in those towns, we'll carry up to between 10,000 to 20,000 homes. It's not just homes, there's going to be schools, shops, offices. And we're going to talk about what will be in that ideal home. You can see many of the technologies in the ideal home behind us. Will it have a heat pump? Will it have a EV charger? Will it have a battery? Will it have solar? Before we get into that, let's introduce the panel. George, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm George.
Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sorry, that was a bit too short. I'm an architect, but people might know me off the telly. No, I'm an architect, TV presenter, write books on homes and housing. I'm a bit of a home obsessive, I would say. I'm absolutely addicted to homes and housing and designing new homes for people wherever they are and refurbishing old ones.
Thank you, George.
And my name's Seb Loyn. I am a planning and development director, a frustrated architect now, because I also studied architecture and then I saw the light.
Why did you stop doing architecture?
Because my dad was an architect and I heard those guys work far too hard for their money, is the truth of it. And I went to the dark side, I went into development. But no, we've got one of the 7 named new towns as well. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation about our vision of that new town and then how it filters down to the scale of a new house within it.
So we know that the current government's got a plan to build 1.5 million homes during its spell. So these new towns are essential, but new towns aren't a new thing. George, I believe you grew up in a new town. Is that true?
I did. I've got a couple of slides. I hope you don't mind me showing them. So I am a new town boy. I was basically brought up. Oh, there's me, with my Muppet Show T-shirt on. That's not a great picture, is it? Actually, this is one of my favourite family shots ever. So that's me with my little tracksuit on. There's my sister. There's my nana and my granddad. My granddad inspired me to become an architect. He was a builder. But I'd like to think that my nana invented the feature wallpaper idea. The only thing was she used different wallpaper on every different wall, right? Now, but on a serious point, though, so I thought my nana was just really trendy by doing that. But it was because they didn't have any money. She used to go to the wallpaper shop, and when there was an end of run, if they were running out of stock where you couldn't do an entire room, you're nodding away, I love that, you're like, yeah. And there'd be like a bucket at the front counter, and it would just have like end of roll rolls, if you like, where instead of it being £1.20 each, it was 10 pence each. So my nana would just go, I'm having them, and go back and just do one wall. So I was brought up in Newtown, and I didn't actually realise I was being brought up in a new town. You know, like my mum and dad moved to this little house, and there was loads of construction work going on around us and lots of landscape and other houses being built. I had absolutely no idea that I was living on this visionary, utopian new town estate that was being built. And it was only years later when I got to like 18, 19, I went to university and I started studying about new towns as an architect then, looking into them. I was like, oh my God, where I lived was absolutely amazing. So Sunderland is where I was born. Newcastle's where I went to university. And the government back in the 1960s decided, just like they're deciding now, where should we have our new towns, where they're going to be. So 10 miles from Sunderland and 10 miles from Newcastle, there was an old village called Washington. And it was mainly a pit village, multiple little tiny villages, all with collieries on there. And so you can imagine, you'd have the big colliery, you'd have some rows of Victorian-style housing where the workers from the colliery were there, and that was practically it. So they decided that they were going to build. So in 1964, Washington was designated a new town. It was fully completed in 1988. My mum moved there when I was like 3-4 years old, so that was 1978 we moved into our house. So you can tell it was still a building site because it wasn't finished till 88. 10,000 new homes built and nearly 60,000 people living there today. Now this is a shot going back quite a long time. My mum's house is actually there. It's that one at the end of that terrace there. It was done as a radial town, so they built a shopping centre in the middle, with all the facilities you'd imagine, libraries, doctors, everything else, and then a number of villages around it. This was ours, Blackfell Village. Every single village had its own schools, its own shops, yeah, its own little community centre. Yeah, so I used to literally walk from there. You can see how green it was. These were our football fields. Yeah? And as I walked from my mum's house, you can actually see there's a little square in there. It was all pedestrianised. So all of us had our own safe spaces to play in when we were kids. And when I walked from my mum's house all the way through the estate, yeah, I could cut up here, and you'd never cross a single road on your way to school. So the cars were very much kept separate. But it wasn't like some kind of 1960s monolithic blocks of concrete towers. It was all 2 or 3 story houses. So just in my square, my mum had a 4-bedroom, 2-story house on her terrace. On the other side of the street, 4-bedroom, 2 stories. Then 90 degrees to my mum's house, there was 2-story, 4 bedrooms, 3-story, 6-bedroom house for multi-generational extended families. And then on the top end of the square, single-story bungalows for the elderly or people who might have access issues. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. The landscaping strategy, it doesn't look very green there because this is when it was all being first built. But if you go onto Google and put Washington Newtown, it is like a jungle. All of the trees and all the plantings matured everywhere. So it was green in many respects, but where it wasn't green, well, it was built fast and it was built beautiful. I mean, this is, I know it looks very 60s and 70s. I thought it looked really cool. And it was amazing how they had different design teams working on different villages. And the most important thing for delivery, because I think delivering a scheme as big as this, as fast as this, and as good as this, meant that you had to have people that cared. The people had to really care. The architects, the designers, landscape architects, highways, they had to really care. But the government and councils had to give them a free rein to get on and do the job. Yeah? There was a planner, I met him about 4 years ago. He's 80-odd years old. He was a 22-year-old planner working on my new town. Yeah, back in the day. And he said, George, it was amazing. There was so much energy, so much enthusiasm, so much positivity. And I said, but what if you wanted to make a design change? Like, did you have to go back to the planners and more public consultation? He went, no. We just had the freedom to get on and do it. And it was a fantastic place to live. I'm not just being nostalgic. So it was 17 villages, 1 new town. It wasn't just one huge estate. It was that beautiful network of individual villages. And they created homes, jobs, roads, schools, shops, pubs, everything built from scratch and all done in about 14, 15 years. And that's it. There's the drawings for it. And that's my mum's house. She still lives there now. And it is amazing. It might look really simple. It was built in 1968. The space planning is absolutely amazing. That was my little square off to the side. There's the bungalows I told you about at the top. But the problem with this entire development is nobody was talking about ecology, sustainability, or climate change. So these houses were built with cavity walls, no insulation. Yeah. So the design for me was outstanding. Of its time, I get it. It looks a bit dated now. It was green in terms of landscaping, but it was really terrible when it came to sustainability, which is why I think the potential of new towns to be truly green and sustainable is a fantastic opportunity.
So I now have the pleasure of showing you a new town, and hopefully it won't take quite so long to build out. So this is Brabazon, one of the government's 7 named new towns, and just to sort of contextualise it, as George did. For those of you that know Bristol, it's about 4.5 miles north of central Bristol, and it's sort of bound by both the M5 and the M4, which means it has incredible connectivity, which I think is also really important to any new town, is that people need to be able to move to other places sustainably. We're right next to Bristol Parkway Station, which is 75 minutes into central London, and we're building a brand new train station that will connect to that in the fullness of time, but also through to Temple Meads. I think critically as well, around Brabazon is one of the most productive areas in the UK. So actually, if it was a London borough, it would be the 6th most productive London borough, GVA per hour, so gross value added per hour. So it's really important, I think, that new towns aren't just controversially, I suppose, aren't just about houses. They're actually about all those other things that you can do. So along the bottom, you can see the scale of Brabazon. If you were to walk from one side to another, just to give it a London context, you'd be getting out at King's Cross station and walking all the way across Regent's Park. So it's absolutely enormous, 3.5 kilometres long. 30,000 new jobs, train stations, retail, hotels. Something that separates it from all the other new towns as well is we're building the third largest arena in the country, next to also a huge flat floor exhibition space very similar to this. So it means that the new town itself will become a destination as well in its own right. It's really important that those things all come online at the same time. I think there's been a lot of criticism of new towns and large housing estates where it's all just houses and actually people don't have bakeries or independent foods and shops, big areas of park. So at YTL, what we've made sure that we do is deliver all of that as part of the first phases. So this is all.
Are you building any pubs?
I know that I've made it when the Brabazon Arms is built.
You've got to build a pub, mate.
That's a big moment for that. And
you could even name it after yourself.
And I'm going to make sure it looks really old and cool.
Like a ye olde
like
pub.
A ye olde one, even though it's brand new. Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
That's the plan. So we've got Waitrose coming, we've got the arena, we've got paddle courts, we've got everything that you would look and expect to find basically in a new city district, really. It's also, many of it is built out. So this is a row of affordable houses. And I thought I'd put this up for you, George, as well, because actually it's really important for us that we don't distinguish between the open market, the affordable. My brief to the architects is to make conservation areas of the future. That's the sort of challenge that I set them. High quality bricks, but of course, one of the things that perhaps didn't get delivered within your new town was that sustainability, and we've been working really closely.
No, I mean, everyone had gas boilers, simple as that, with very little insulation, so it was pretty poor.
Yeah, so, these are EPC rated A, put them in the top 2% in the country. That's absolutely...
Are you jumping in with a question already? He hasn't even finished.
You can't buy a house.
She's literally just screaming and her arms are waving in the air. I was like, what's wrong with her? How much is affordable?
So we sell them to what are called registered providers who then... these are all actually called shared ownership. Sorry, not shared ownership, social rent. So they're rented basically to people who are on a housing association list. So I don't know what the rent is.
They're not for sale.
Vary. But if you live in London, I'm afraid, it's a bit of a commute for you. But I'm pleased that's the sort of questions I'm getting already.
But I think your fair point is nothing's really affordable at the minute. Even affordable housing... It doesn't feel like it's affordable, but normally it's like 20% or 40% below market rent, depending on how it's pitched and who the registered provider is. But I think build to rent is a really, really good thing to be doing. So I think one of the problems with successive governments over the last 30 years, they've been obsessed by home ownership. And if you haven't built enough houses when there's massive demand, as we know, house prices go up and then they become unaffordable. But I think build to rent is a really, really good option. And really that was the model for my mum's house. She rented for years. She rented from the council. It was then the council housing stock was given over to a registered provider, but she just paid her rent. And she knew she paid her rent, which wasn't massively expensive. She had a home for life. That's the difference. So it's a very valid question.
Just cantering through, public open space, and you talked about high quality space. So these are the fronts of the houses. So these are areas, there are 10 houses around this shared bit of public open space. They've got a private garden to the rear. So it's really important to us within new towns as well that you're fostering a community quickly. And I think that's another thing that perhaps newer developments are failing to do. And then craftsmanship, you can see this wall here, you can see the landscaping. It's got to look incredible, in my view, throughout all the seasons. So just that attention to detail and really making sure that when people move in, they feel like it's an established place already rather than a sort of new place.
Yeah, and that's quite similar to my estate, really.
I was looking at your images and thinking because they're quite similar.
Yeah, but I think that's going to mature more and more and more over the next 15, 20 years, and it'll look really beautiful, that. Good houses.
And then, finally, we've got double height spaces as well. We are all three-dimensional beings, and too often, I think, you see new houses and it's all sort of single level, but actually if we can create double height spaces with the right aspect, huge amounts of natural light coming in, that's really helpful for sustainability as well, because you don't always have to stick your lights on, etc. So, really trying to deliver a different type of new build home as part of these new towns.
Is that you done?
That's me done.
But one of the reasons we're here is because they're very sustainable. And you are working with Mitsubishi
Correct.
and installing air source heat pumps.
So all of our homes are, like I said, EPC rated A. We've designed them to cater for the future home standard. They've all got air source heat pumps, so we're using the Ecodan system that I think you could go and find over on this stand. So the future home standard is all about reducing emissions effectively. And
It's only just been introduced though, hasn't it? I mean, literally.
Well, but as you say, it's sort of 10 years in the making. So we've got 450 acres here. So as soon as we knew that was coming online, we made sure that our homes were fit for that. They're now actually exceeding those standards. I mean, I think for me, what is a sustainable house? The kit that these guys produce is phenomenal for delivering that from an energy perspective, but also then there's the carbon body within the embodied carbon within those homes. So you need to ensure that they're of a high quality. They're designed to be flexible and adapted over time. They don't look tired and worn out. They're not getting knocked down in sort of 30, 40 years. You know, the kit that these guys are putting in, you know, my bills when I moved in to the house at Brabazon dropped by about 60%, just to give you an idea.
One of the biggest things about the Future Home Standard is that they're banning gas and oil-fired boilers in new build homes. And so you have to use cleaner, greener forms of generating hot water and heating for your house. Hence why Mitsubishi Electric, for many years, have been developing air source heat pumps. And I've got one in my house. So I'm now off gas, which is really, really good. And it's a really efficient system. And it saves money on my energy bill. So it's kind of a no-brainer. And when you're building houses, new build at a much higher sustainable standard than my house, because I live in a 1960s house in London. So I put some insulation in, I put triple glazing in, more insulation in the roof. For you to be putting in high insulation standards and using clean and green forms of heating is amazing.
Yeah, I think the government's plan with the Future Home Standard is that all new homes will be net zero ready. You probably heard a lot about net zero through the news. But with the Brabazon development, it's net zero ready now. It already surpasses the Future Home Standard. I mean, what was the experience like of living in a home like that, Seb?
I mean, it was great because a lot I think of developers sort of churn out these homes and never really then live in them, see how it feels. And there were things that I've changed since in subsequent phases as well. I moved from sort of quite a large house that was old, and then moved into the house that I was in was 1,600 square foot. And the other thing that really struck me was how important designing efficient space was, and actually flexible space. And it's not all about the square footage, actually. You can get really small spaces working incredibly hard.
In my mum's house, the one that I showed you, I had to comply with space planning laws back in the day. And so it was unbelievably efficient. It wasn't big at all, but a decent-sized kitchen, decent-sized living room. Living was open plan to the dining room. The staircase was in the centre of the plan. When you went up there was basically 4 bedrooms in the 4 corners of the house with a bathroom in between. That was it.
I'm starting to worry that we've just copied your Washington.
If you've copied Washington and made it green and sustainable,
I
would have no problem moving in. I think on a serious point, I think what's wonderful about it is me growing up in that new town was amazing. Yes, it was experimental. They took massive risks. Very brave, to build 10,000 houses like what you're doing in a relatively short period of time with all the amenities that you want. And this is proper placemaking. There's a lot of house builders out there just build their cookie-cut housing, and there's no local shops, and there's no pubs, and there's no nothing, and everyone's got to drive miles. For me, that's not the future of housing in Britain. I just don't believe that at all. I think we need to feel like we're part of a community, not just with a house, with our car on the front drive. Loads of block paviers everywhere, not enough parking. There's some new developments I go to, and there's cars parked all over the footpaths, which is just not safe for people at all. So I take my hat off to you. I think what you're doing in terms of innovation and sustainability and placemaking is fantastic.
But Jens, just to chip in there, I mean, look, we talked about these homes being efficient. You've lived with some sustainable technology in your house. In fact, you've lived with a heat pump now for about 8 years, George. What's it like living with a heat pump in your house?
I love it. I don't have to think about it, to be honest. So, the old gas boiler went. We designed the new system to make the air source heat pump work more efficiently. You know, I upgraded the insulation in there. I'd already changed my windows to triple glazing. I was changing the old windows from single anyway. They were put in the 1960s. And I was like, do you know what? Double glazing's a bit more expensive, but triple glazing's only a fraction more beyond that. The good thing with triple, it's not just thermally brilliant, it's acoustically brilliant. So my house is really, I'm in West London, but it's very, very quiet. And then my air source heat pumps outside, and I mean, genuinely, Russ, I do not have to think about it at all. Literally, it's set to it's pre-programmed, does its job, it does all my hot water, does all my heating. And my energy bills genuinely have dropped. There is no, I'm not just saying that. Like, for me, they've dropped quite considerably because the gas boiler that I had in the house was really inefficient. It still worked. I bet lots of you have got gas boilers and you're like, that's fine. It works fine. It's been there for 15 years. It still works. I'm sure it does, but how efficient is it? You know, a lot of the component parts might be quite old, so you might be spending lots of money for all the input of that gas, but the actual heat energy that you're getting out of it is not that good. And air source heat pumps, as you know, are staggeringly efficient.
They're also
for the amount that you're spending on the energy, that it's people have got to remember that the amount of energy you get out of an air source heat pump is way more than you get out of a gas boiler or an oil-fired boiler for the amount of energy that you put in. So that's why your energy bills get reduced.
they're great for underfloor heating as well, you know. So we've got underfloor heating in ours, and air source heat pumps marry really well, don't they, with sort of low heat output just across a sort of bigger space. That's
Yeah, it's
really
perfect for that. A lower heat output makes a more comfortable space.
I always call it gentle heating because I think quite often, you know, in the UK, particularly inside of older period houses, you know, you come home, the house is freezing, you whack the heating on, you bung it up to 24 degrees, then the house gets really hot and you turn it down again, and then the drafts start coming in and you whack it up again, and so that's like quite erratic, high intensive heating, and that intensive heating is costing you a lot of money because you've probably heard people say if you turn your boiler down by 1 degree, you're going to make a saving. That's absolutely true. Well, if you're whacking it up to 24 and whacking it back down to 19, that's just bonkers. That's like taking loads of energy, costing you a lot of money, and then it's dropping off again. But with an air source heat pump, it just operates at a gentler, softer level, so the temperature's less, but it's on for longer, but that makes it more efficient. So I don't know whether you know this or not, but if you turn on the kettle in your house, if you've got a standard electric kettle, that is one of the most energy-intensive appliances in your home. That's because you're taking water at room temperature, and in like a minute and a half, it's at 100 degrees. Boof. Do you know how much pressure there is on the national grid during a commercial break of Emmerdale Farm and Coronation Street? Because all of you lot, all at the same time, go and make a cup of tea and put... It does, genuinely does. And the other thing to think about is using off-peak energy. So I work with an energy provider quite a lot on this, just saying to people, look, there are ways that you can harness some energy during off-peak times, because basically your on-peak is between like 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock, and that's normally when you get home from work and the kids have come back from school. That's the highest energy cost point of the day. So if there's a way of you using energy in a different way, it's going to save you money as well.
So we've got a couple of minutes left. You've heard about George Clarke's mom's wallpaper. We've got a couple of minutes. Are there any questions from the audience for the panel?
Any questions? I think we might have a microphone around. Have we got a mic? Have we got a Roman mic? There's a Roman mic there. This gentleman here at the back, I believe, with the cool shirt on. And then we'll come to you after, mate. I think you were next.
So the last time I had a boiler service, I asked about, do my radiators need to be any bigger? And he said yes, if I was to have an air source heat pump. What options have you got if a lot of them can't be any bigger than they already are? Or was he just saying that because he wants to keep me on gas boilers so that I keep paying him for annual services?
Do you want the Mitsubishi man to give you that answer?
Yeah. So yes, you don't have to change your radiators. The bigger your radiators are, the more efficient they are. So it's always a good idea to have something that can emit a lot of heat. But the new heat pumps that are on the market will give you water at 75 degrees, which is basically a direct replacement for a gas boiler. So in my personal home, I put a heat pump in October. I never changed a single radiator, and I run my system up to 75 degrees, but as low as maybe 35, 40 degrees. So It's a good idea, but it's not essential.
So when I put my air source heat pump in, I didn't change my radiators at all. I didn't need to do it. And I've actually got one of the kind of slightly lower temperature heat pumps, and it works perfectly well. But a lot of people now are going for the high temperature heat pumps, which I believe is the R290 high temperature heat pump. And as Russ says, that's kind of replicating a high energy boiler. So you shouldn't have to replace your radiators, but it might be worth doing.
There's a trade-off. So you don't replace your radiators, you might pay a little bit more to run the heat pump. If you do replace your radiators, you'll lower the running costs, but you're obviously spending more money on the radiator.
And I think just to chip in one extra thing, you know, if you get someone round to look at that system will be designed and calculated everybody's house is different insulation standards, different windows. You might have more south-facing windows to get more solar gain than another house. So it's about looking at everyone's individual house, seeing what the need is, seeing what your existing house is like, and then whether the system's going to work and what's the right pump for the house. It sounds complicated, but it's not.
We've probably got time for a couple more questions.
Yeah, gentleman unfortunately with a Chelsea shirt on.
I guess for me, though, the exam question isn't so much about new developments because they're generally well insulated. They actually can complement air source heat pumps very well. It's really about this sort of retrofitting thing. The government's trying to push us all to have these big boxes fitted outside our homes to do air source heat pumps. But I guess looking at what's happening in the States and certainly in colder climes, it's very evident that the air source heat pumps are not providing enough heat in the winter months, and then there are top-up heating requirements. I guess the question is, how do we deal with that conundrum, particularly for retrofit properties?
I'm not sure if I entirely agree with that.
Of course, you live in West London. You
No. But I was just that's like literally some of the biggest users of air source heat pumps are in Norway, Sweden, and Finland, and in northern parts of that country. An air source heat pump still functions even if it's minus 20 degrees outside. Say that again. It's not providing enough heat. I think that's just a badly designed system then.
So most of Scandinavia is on heat pump technology at much lower temperatures. The heat pumps today will heat your home down to minus 20 outside and give you as much heat as you need. If I was to say...
All I can think is that it must be a badly designed system in houses that aren't insulated properly. I don't know, but the reason why I'm not saying it doesn't happen, I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just finding it hard to get my head around when I know that I've gone to some very, very cold countries where that system's operating at a decent level and it's not at exorbitant costs. I mean, obviously, if it's freezing outside, the air source heat pump's going to work a bit harder to get the heat in there. I get that, but I mean, the only thing I would say there is maybe the Americans' their houses are too big, and maybe the pump's too small. That's all I could say to that.
So what I would say is they definitely work when it's cold. They'll definitely give enough heat. They're not noisy. One thing to consider is hot water. So you will absolutely need a hot water cylinder. And you need a hot water cylinder because you're basically using your hot water cylinder as a battery. So you're looking to use energy when it's cheap, use a lot of free energy with a heat pump, and then you want to store that energy for when you need it. So you'll heat your hot water cylinder overnight and you'll use it in a day. And that's one of the major benefits of heat pumps.
It might sound crazy, so my hot water is on nearly all the time. Now, my granddad would go mad at that. Like, when I was a kid, I used to have to ask him to put the hot water on for me to have a bath because I had to heat up all the water in the immersion tank. So it was just like, Granddad, can I have a bath? Yep. Literally flick the switch and he'd say, you're going to have to wait half an hour. So all the water in that tank was cold. Well, it was room temperature. And then all that heat would have to go in to heat it up. The idea with this is that your hot water is always at a decent temperature all the time, and the heat pump's just gently topping it up as and when you need it. Turn it off if you go on holiday for a few weeks, of course, or just turn the temperature down of the water requirement that you need. There is a little bit of like user-consumer management, isn't there? I mean, I've heard a lot of stories where people have their air source heat pump system at 24 degrees because that's what they did when the gas boiler was in. But just tiny little bit of education from the installer and it'll be much more efficient.
How are we doing for time? We got one more question?
One more?
Yeah, one more question?
Does the heat pump have to be outside the building?
Yes.
Right. And what about, you said about a water tank,
Yeah. So,
right? How big does the water tank have to be?
That's a very good question. So, can I jump in on this one? I'm a real expert on air source heat pumps now, I tell you. So the reason why the unit has to sit outside is you can see it if you come to the stand. We've got the Mitsubishi stand just off to the left of the show home. So it's basically a unit that sits outside and there's a fan on there. And that fan's just gently turning around. Everybody thinks it's noisy, but it's not. The reason why people think they're noisy is because most big old air conditioning units are whirring away on houses. And that fan is basically bringing in air into the unit. It's taking heat from the air. It's compressing that heat to make a super, super hot element inside that unit. I'm kind of slightly oversimplifying, but making it really hot. And then that heating element is gently heating up water in a storage tank. Now, the size of storage tank depends on how big your house is, how many radiators you need to heat, and how many bathrooms you've got. So I would say roughly on a kind of 4-bedroom house with a couple of bathrooms, you need a 220, 250 litre tank. Yeah, which is probably, I knew you were going to say that. She went, how big's that? So it's probably mine's about that high, and it's about that
Is it like the
diameter.
immersion?
What?
Is it like the old immersion kind
No,
of-
so in principle, yes, but the immersions were rubbish. Right? You probably remember people used to like wrap insulation in jackets and second-hand clothes around it to give it some insulation. This is much better than that. So this is fully insulated and fully sealed. But it is like having if you opened your airing cupboard and you had a tank in there, it's a bit like that. And there's a few other little bits of kit in there. So you do need to have room for it. Interestingly, my tank is not in my house. Because my house is not massive, I've got a relatively small townhouse, so I didn't have like a massive airing cupboard where I could put the tank in there. So I've built a little insulated shed in my garden, and my water tank's out there. Yeah, and the unit sits. My unit, so your air source heat pump might sit on the side of your house or the back of your house. I'm loving this.
Right. Does it have to be next to your wall, or could it be along?
So
the
mine
side?
is even in the garden, right? But
Right.
the problem that with mine being in the garden, we've got to run pipes from the unit and the tank to my house. So you've got to make sure they're insulated pipes because you don't want your water getting cold outside. The most efficient way is to have it on the back of your house, quite close to where the tank or cylinder is going to be. Even if the cylinder's upstairs, it's quite nice so you can just have it on the back of your house, have all the hot and cold water feeds going up to that tank, and you're done.
Our cylinder can't be upstairs anymore.
You can put your cylinder anywhere you like. You can stick it in the garage, you can stick it in the garden.
We used to have it, but we had, the boiler that heats all the water.
I mean, you should have a cup of tea.
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, definitely.
What's your name?
My first name's Carol.
Carol.
Yeah.
Can I suggest, and I'm being deadly serious, when this finishes, come over to the Mitsubishi stand.
Yeah.
It's literally just to the left of the
Yeah.
showroom, and all the team will be there. I'll be there for 5
Yeah.
minutes. I'll show you the unit, and I'll
Yeah.
show you the tank.
I'll tell you why I asked. I had my boiler serviced, right, just recently, and the plumber said you've probably got 2 more years. As is a Worcester Bosch, right, be 12 years old. They might not start carrying on making the parts. Right?
I'm not even going to do the
I'm
hard
not
sell on
even-
you.
no.
Let me have a chat with you about air source heat pumps,
Just
and
say-
we'll get the system designed. I'm being deadly serious.
I can't do it not
we'll
yet.
we'll get someone on it, right? We'll get it designed, and you can make a decision.
I can't do it.
Oh,
not
the other
yet.
thing as well, you get $7,500 off the government, free money.
One more thing, if you get one installed, George will come to your house.
I'll come and see your house. No. I mean, as long as you don't all do it at the same time. We didn't mention it. So the government have got a scheme to try and... So if you've got an old gas boiler and you put a new gas boiler in, right, that's a relatively cheap thing to do. Is it the right thing to do? Yeah, probably not, right? An air source heat pump might cost a little bit more if you're comparing like for like. Yes, so let's say gas boiler. I shouldn't throw figures in because it depends on the design of your house. But let's say a gas boiler might cost you 60% of an air source heat pump install, or 50%, right? The government have realised that this new technology might cost a little bit more money for the install, but that it's better for the country, better for the planet, better that we've got an electrified system and we're not dependent on fossil fuels that we're buying from other countries around the world. And as the technology is getting better, it's becoming more affordable. I mean, solar panels have reduced in price by 90% in the last 25 years, right? 90%. percent, right? And so air source heat pumps are getting a bit cheaper and a bit cheaper all the time, even with all the difficult market forces. But the government now will give you personally £7,500. Well, they won't actually. Your installer gets it. So the installer gets the £7,500 back from the government, and that's free money. That's not a loan. So that's an incentive even more to make that transition. But on a serious point, you've got to balance the capital cost, the money that you get from the government, making sure that the design system works for your house, and making sure that you're making some saving on your energy bills. If all of those things stack up, it makes complete sense to do. If it doesn't stack up, then you might have to look at something different. Is that all right, Carl? We'll see you on the stand after this. What did you say? I missed you. Won't be. I know, but it might take me 2 years to design the system for you. Let's get going. It won't take me 2 years to design the system for you, but the fact that you're saying 2 years, I think it's worth planning for that. Just to start thinking about it now. Get some. It might be worth us taking you to see someone who's got an air source heat pump, and you can see the install, and you can find out from a customer how well it works. That'll build up a little bit of confidence for you. Then we'll get it designed and get it all priced, and see if it works for you. And if it does, it'd be fantastic.
Thank you all for listening, and remember, if you buy a heat pump, George will come and visit you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the show. Take care.